Welcome. Take a moment. If you're listening to this right now, there's a good chance you're holding something quietly. It usually shows up at the end of the day. The engine is off. The phone lights up your face. You check your balance. Nothing is on fire, but something doesn't feel steady. You work hard. You show up. You do what you're supposed to do. And still, there's that low pressure in your chest. Not panic, not fear. Just the sense that one unexpected hit could change everything. No one talks about this part. The part where you're not broke, but you're not free either. And in that silence, a thought lands. Uncomfortable, clear. No one is coming to fix this. Not the market, not your job, not luck, just you and the way you respond. There is an old way of thinking that doesn't promise quick wins. It doesn't hype you up. It doesn't sell shortcuts. It teaches something quieter: how to regain control, how to stand steady when numbers fluctuate, how to build calm that doesn't depend on the next deposit. This is where we begin. Just you. And the way you respond. For a long time, the response looks responsible. You wake up early. You beat traffic. You answer emails before coffee. You stay late when others leave. Your calendar is full. Your body is tired. Your intentions are good. And yet every month feels strangely familiar. The paycheck comes in. Bills line up like they always do. Rent, insurance, groceries, gas. A dinner out that was supposed to be just this once. A subscription you forgot to cancel. A small repair that somehow costs more than expected. Nothing dramatic, nothing reckless. Still, when the dust settles, you're standing in the same place. You tell yourself to keep pushing, that this is just how it works. That effort will eventually catch up to you. But there's a quiet frustration that builds when effort doesn't translate into movement. Not anger, not jealousy, just confusion. You're doing what you were taught. Work hard, be reliable, don't complain, handle your responsibilities. That mindset runs deep here. It's almost sacred. And that's why the feeling is so unsettling. Because if hard work alone was enough, you wouldn't still be checking your balance before deciding whether you can say yes to a simple invitation. You wouldn't feel that subtle tension when an unknown number calls. You wouldn't measure every purchase against a future you're not sure you're actually building. Most people don't talk about this part. They assume something is wrong with them, but this is where the Stoics would pause. Not to criticize your effort. Effort matters, but to ask a sharper question. What exactly is your effort aimed at? Stoicism was never about grinding harder. It was about aligning action with reality. The Stoics observed something most people miss. You can exhaust yourself doing the right things and still move in circles if your actions are driven by habit instead of intention. Working hard feels virtuous, but hard work without direction quietly turns into survival mode. You're busy reacting, covering, catching up. And when life stays reactive, progress stays fragile. This isn't a moral failure. It's a structural one. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person can waste their life not by doing nothing, but by doing many things that lead nowhere. That's the trap. When effort becomes a substitute for clarity, you feel productive, but remain exposed. Every unexpected expense feels heavier than it should. Every market shift feels personal. Every financial decision carries emotional weight it doesn't deserve. Because deep down, you sense the truth. You're working hard, but you're not working from control. And without control, even strong people feel unstable. The Stoics didn't promise wealth. They promised something more practical: firm ground. They taught that freedom begins the moment you stop confusing motion with progress. The moment you stop asking, "How much more can I push?" and start asking what actually moves the needle. This is where things begin to change. Not by doing more, but by seeing more clearly. Because once you understand why hard work alone keeps you stuck, you're finally ready to make a different kind of move. Once you see it, it's hard to unsee. The question lingers longer than expected. If hard work isn't the problem, what is? Most people reach for the obvious answer. More money, a raise, a better job, a side hustle stacked on top of an already full week. It makes sense. Income feels concrete, measurable, safe to blame. You imagine the relief. The number goes up. The pressure eases for a while. Then life adjusts. The rent creeps higher. Insurance renews at a new rate. Groceries cost more than last month. A celebration comes up. A repair you didn't plan for. Something always fills the gap. The number grows, so does the weight. That's when an uncomfortable realization settles in, quietly, without drama. If more income automatically created stability, then people earning twice as much wouldn't lie awake running numbers in their heads. Yet many do. The Stoics paid close attention to patterns like this, not trends, patterns of human behavior. They noticed that distress rarely comes from the size of what we have. It comes from how exposed we feel. Exposure is the real stressor. Not knowing how long you could stand if the ground shifted. Not knowing which part of your life you actually command. Not knowing whether one surprise could corner you into decisions you'd rather not make. Income alone doesn't fix that. Because income is something that arrives and leaves. Control is something you build. The Stoics drew a hard line between the two. Some things depend on us, some things don't. That wasn't philosophy for classrooms. It was survival guidance. Your paycheck depends on forces outside your command. Markets, management, timing, health. You can influence it, but you don't own it. What you do own is how prepared you are when conditions change. How much margin you've built. How many choices remain available when pressure shows up. That's the distinction most people miss. They keep chasing the next increase without reinforcing the structure underneath. It's like pouring water into a container with thin walls. You can add more, but it doesn't feel safer. Marcus Aurelius warned against mistaking external gains for internal security, not because money is bad, but because it's unreliable as a foundation. When your sense of stability rests on what arrives next, your nervous system never fully settles. You're always leaning forward, always bracing. That's why even good months feel fragile. They depend on conditions continuing. Stoicism offers a different orientation. Instead of asking, How do I earn more? It asks, how do I reduce dependence? Dependence on timing, on constant inflow, on perfect conditions. This isn't about lowering ambition. It's about anchoring it. When you shift focus from income to control, the conversation changes. You start noticing where money slips out without intention, where small decisions quietly drain your options, where convenience trades places with freedom, and you begin to see a path forward that doesn't rely on a single number rising. A path where stability grows from alignment, not luck. This isn't the moment things get exciting. It's the moment they get real. Because once you stop treating income as the root of the problem, you're finally in a position to address what actually is. That realization shifts something. If stability doesn't come from chasing the next number, then it has to come from somewhere else. This is where the Stoics slow everything down, not to make life smaller, but to make it clearer. They start by drawing a line, quiet, unemotional, firm. On one side are things that move when you push them. On the other are things that don't. You can feel the difference the moment you name it. The market moves on its own schedule. Interest rates rise without asking permission. A company restructures. A client disappears. A headline changes the mood overnight. You watch these things the way you watch weather. You prepare, but you don't command them. Then there's the other side, the things that respond immediately when you touch them. The way money leaves your account. The fees you accept without noticing. The habits you repeat because they feel familiar. The pause you take or don't before spending. The systems you build or avoid because they feel tedious. This is where control actually lives. Most people blur the line. They stress over what they can't steer and ignore what they can. That reversal is exhausting. The Stoics saw it clearly. Epictetus put it simply: peace begins when you stop demanding control where none is possible and start exercising it where it is. This isn't about optimism, it's about placement. You stop bracing against forces that don't care, and you start reinforcing the ground under your feet. Picture a kitchen table late at night. The house is quiet, a single light on. You open a banking app and don't scroll. You just look, not with judgment, with curiosity. What leaves automatically every month? What drains slowly enough to hide? What decisions are being made without your consent because you set them in motion years ago? This is where Stoicism becomes practical. Control doesn't arrive as a feeling. It arrives as structure. A transfer that happens whether you remember or not. A limit that forces a pause. A buffer that absorbs impact so your emotions don't have to. Marcus Aurelius warned that most suffering comes from assigning importance to the wrong things. Not because those things don't matter, but because we treat them as if they belong to us. Income feels personal. Markets feel personal. Outcomes feel personal. But control is quieter. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as fewer urgent decisions, less second guessing, more room between stimulus and response. When you strengthen what's under your command, external swings lose their grip. A surprise expense becomes an inconvenience, not a crisis. A slow month becomes information, not panic. A delay becomes manageable. That's not luck. That's alignment. The Stoics weren't trying to dominate the world. They were trying to stand firmly inside it. They understood that freedom isn't the absence of pressure. It's the presence of preparation. And preparation is built where your hands actually reach. This is the shift. You stop asking the world to behave, and you start organizing your response. Not perfectly, not overnight, but deliberately. Because once you know what you can control, you stop wasting strength everywhere else. And that's when steadiness begins to feel real. Once steadiness starts to feel possible, another pattern comes into focus. It doesn't begin with numbers. It begins with a feeling. You've had a long day. Traffic was heavier than usual. The inbox didn't slow down. By the time you sit on the couch, your shoulders are tight without you noticing. You open your phone. Not to buy anything in particular, just to scroll. A jacket, a gadget, a limited time offer that promises ease status relief. For a moment, it works. The tension drops. Your breathing softens. You feel caught up, included. That moment is desire, not greed, not recklessness. Just the quiet wish to feel better right now. The Stoics paid close attention to moments like this. They didn't condemn desire. They studied what happens when desire goes unexamined, because desire, when unanswered, fades. But when indulged without awareness, it asks for more. The purchase goes through, the confirmation email arrives, and the feeling passes faster than expected. A few weeks later, the statement shows up. The balance is higher. The minimum payment looks small, manageable. That's where debt quietly enters, not as a crisis, as a convenience. Debt doesn't announce itself as a chain. It presents itself as flexibility. Buy now, decide later. And later comes with interest. Now certain choices shrink. You hesitate before changing jobs. You feel pressure to keep things stable, even if they're not right. You stay because leaving feels expensive. That's dependence, not on people, on outcomes, on uninterrupted income, on everything going according to plan. The Stoics understood this progression well. They warned that the most dangerous traps aren't forced on us. They're accepted willingly because they promise comfort. Epictetus taught that a person is not free if they need what they cannot guarantee. Debt creates that need. Not always immediately, but inevitably. Once obligations outpace, buffers your options narrow. You don't ask, what's the right move? You ask, what can I afford to risk? And that question changes behavior. You become cautious in places that require courage, reactive instead of deliberate, busy protecting instead of building. This is why Stoicism treats desire as a starting point, not a flaw. Desire is information. It tells you where relief is missing, where recognition feels scarce, where rest hasn't been earned or allowed. The mistake is trying to solve those needs with transactions. Money can ease friction. but it can't replace grounding. When desire drives, spending creates debt. Debt demands dependence, and dependence erodes the very control you're trying to regain. The Stoic response isn't denial, it's interruption. A pause long enough to ask a better question. What am I actually trying to fix right now? Fatigue, loneliness, stress, the need to feel ahead. Most of the time, the answer has nothing to do with the item in your cart. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the mind is disturbed not by events, but by the stories it tells about them. Desire speaks in stories. This will help. You deserve this. Just this once. Stoicism doesn't silence that voice. It listens and then decides. When you learn to meet desire without immediately obeying it, the chain breaks early. No debt added, no future pressure created, no dependence reinforced, just choice. And choice repeated is how control is rebuilt. Not through force, through understanding. Because once you see the path from desire to dependence, you don't need to fight it. You simply stop walking it. Once you stop walking that path, something subtle changes in how you move through the day. The moments that used to pull at you lose some of their grip. You're standing in line for coffee. The screen flashes upgrades. A friend mentions a new truck. Someone at work jokes about a vacation you haven't planned. Nothing dramatic happens. No argument inside your head. You simply don't reach. Not because you can't, because you don't need to. That's temperance the Stoic kind. Not restraint fueled by fear. Restraint fueled by clarity. Most people misunderstand this. They think self-control means saying no to pleasure, white-knuckling through life, living smaller than necessary. The Stoics meant something else entirely. They meant not being pulled around by the opinions of the room. In this culture, proving yourself is subtle. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just keeping up with lifestyles, with expectations, with the unspoken scoreboard that resets every time you think you're finally ahead. You don't notice how much energy that costs until you stop spending it. Picture a Saturday afternoon. You're scrolling through listings you don't need. Not because you plan to buy, just to feel positioned. Then you close the app. The room doesn't change. Your life doesn't shrink. But something inside settles. The Stoics believed that dignity comes from sufficiency, from knowing when enough is enough. Epictetus warned that if you want to be admired, you'll always be dependent on the crowd, not because admiration is bad, but because it's unstable. Crowds move. Standards shift. What impressed yesterday is invisible tomorrow. When spending becomes a way to signal worth, worth becomes expensive. That's how people with good incomes stay uneasy. They're constantly paying rent on an image. Temperance breaks that contract. It says, I don't need to broadcast where I'm headed. I don't need to rush the timeline. I don't need to look further along than I am. This isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about choosing where your attention goes. When you stop spending to be seen, you regain resources that don't show up on statements. Time, focus, bandwidth, decisions get cleaner. You don't ask, will this make me look behind? You ask, does this strengthen my position? That question alone filters out most unnecessary spending. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the best revenge is not to be like those who injure you. In modern life, the injury is pressure. Pressure to appear successful before you are secure. Refusing that pressure is quiet strength. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue. It just shows up as consistency. You start investing in what compounds instead of what impresses. You choose durability over shine, stability over applause. People may not notice right away. That's fine. The man who doesn't need to prove anything isn't trying to be noticed. He's trying to be unshakable. And when you build from that place, every dollar you don't spend to perform becomes a dollar that works for you instead. Not to make a statement, but to buy back your calm. That's not playing small. That's playing long. When you stop spending to impress, space opens up. Not suddenly, quietly. It shows up in small ways. You don't tense when the mail arrives. You don't flinch when a warning light comes on. You don't feel rushed to decide before you're ready. That space has a name: buffer. Most people think of a buffer as money sitting idle, unproductive, boring. The Stoics saw it differently. They understood that calm is not a personality trait. It's a condition, and conditions are built. A buffer is not about growing rich. It's about shrinking panic. Picture an unexpected expense. A tire blows out. A medical bill lands heavier than expected. A slow month stretches longer than planned. Without a buffer, the body reacts first. Heart rate up. Thoughts narrow. Options disappear. You don't ask, what's the wisest move? You ask what hurts least right now. That's how good people make bad decisions. With a buffer, the same moment feels different. The problem stays the same, but your posture changes. You breathe. You look at the numbers without urgency. You decide instead of react. That difference is everything. The Stoics taught that tranquility comes from readiness, not avoidance. They didn't hope trouble wouldn't come. They planned for it without drama. Seneca wrote that it's not the blow itself that crushes us, but the surprise of it. A buffer removes surprise, not by predicting events, but by absorbing them. This is where practicality matters. A buffer isn't built by motivation. It's built by design. Money set aside intentionally, separated from daily spending, out of reach of impulse. Not because you don't trust yourself, because you respect the moment when you'll be tired, stressed, or distracted. Control, in Stoic terms, often looks like automation. Decisions made once, so you don't have to negotiate with yourself every month. When a portion moves automatically, discipline stops being heroic and starts being reliable. That's wisdom. You don't need a perfect number to begin. You need direction. Enough to cover a few weeks, then a month, then more. Each step buys something intangible: sleep, patience, the ability to say no without fear. This is why the buffer matters more than the raise at first. A raise increases flow. A buffer increases strength. Flow depends on circumstances continuing. Strength stands even when they don't. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to fortify the inner citadel. In modern life, that citadel often looks like margin. Margin between income and expenses. Margin between stimulus and response. Margin between pressure and decision. When margin exists, life stops feeling like a constant negotiation. You don't dread transitions. You don't cling to situations that no longer fit. You don't tolerate disrespect because leaving feels too expensive. The buffer buys peace by returning options to your hands. Not flashy options, real ones. Time to think, room to adjust, freedom to choose the better path instead of the desperate one. This isn't about hoarding, it's about grounding, about standing in a world that moves unpredictably without needing it to slow down for you. Build the buffer slowly, respect it, protect it, not as a symbol of fear, but as proof of preparation. Because when pressure comes, and it will, the calm you feel won't be an accident. It will be earned. With a buffer in place, a different kind of tension rises. It's quieter, more personal. You notice it when you scroll past a bill you've meant to question. When you think about a conversation you keep postponing. When you rehearse an explanation in your head and then don't make the call. It's not fear of conflict, it's fear of exposure. Asking for something forces you to stand where you are. No hiding behind effort, no cushioning with excuses. Just a voice, a request, a pause on the other end of the line. Most people avoid these moments for years. They stay on the same plan because it's familiar. They accept the same rate because it's easier. They tell themselves it's not the right time. But the Stoics had a different relationship with discomfort. They didn't chase it. They didn't dramatize it. They met it directly. Courage in Stoic terms isn't about bold gestures. It's about honest contact with reality. The call you've been avoiding isn't dramatic. It's practical. It might be to an insurance company, a service provider, a manager, a client. You sit at the table, phone in hand. The room is still. Your heart speeds up just enough to notice. You think about the worst-case response. Then you think about the cost of never asking. So you dial. The words come out steady, not aggressive, not apologetic, clear. I want to understand my options. I need to revisit this rate. I believe my contribution has grown. Then you wait. Sometimes the answer is no. That's important. The Stoics never promised control over outcomes, only over actions. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should not expect the world to bend to your will, but you should expect yourself to act with integrity regardless of the response. Here's what most people miss. Even when the answer is no, something shifts. You've tested reality instead of assuming it. You've replaced dread with information. You've practiced advocating for yourself without anger or collapse. And often the answer isn't no. It's discussion, adjustment, a better arrangement than you expected. Not because you demanded it, but because you showed up prepared. This is where the buffer changes everything. Without it, these conversations feel dangerous. Too much is at stake. With it, they feel contained. You're not asking from desperation. You're asking from footing. That's the difference between pleading and negotiating. Stoicism teaches that courage is not the absence of anxiety. It's the decision to act without being ruled by it. Every avoided conversation quietly taxes your future. Every direct one strengthens it, not all at once, over time. You begin to notice a pattern. The more you practice these small acts of courage, the less power they hold over you. You stop imagining catastrophe. You start gathering data. You don't inflate yourself. You don't shrink. You state what's true and let the response land where it may. This is how agency is built in modern life. Not through dominance, through presence. When you make the call, you're not just trying to change a number. You're changing your relationship to uncertainty. You're proving to yourself that you can engage without bracing, that you can speak without burning bridges, that you can hear no and still stand, and that quiet confidence compounds. Because the person who can face discomfort directly doesn't need pressure to move. They move on purpose, one call at a time. Once you start making those calls, another temptation shows up. It sounds confident, efficient, almost flattering. There's always someone who knows a faster way, a shortcut that everyone uses, a deal that only works if you move now. You hear it at work, at the gym, in private messages that open with success stories and close with pressure. They speak in certainty, screenshots, urgency. And for a moment, it's convincing. Because deep down, you don't just want stability, you want relief. You want proof that all this effort leads somewhere. This is where the Stoics drew a hard line, not between rich and poor, but between clean money and costly money. Costly doesn't always mean illegal. It means money that asks for something back later. Your sleep, your reputation, your ability to look yourself in the mirror without explanation. Justice, in Stoic terms, wasn't about courts. It was about alignment, earning in a way that doesn't fracture you internally. Seneca warned that wealth gained by compromising character never truly belongs to the one who holds it, because it brings a second ledger, one you keep in your head. You see it when someone celebrates a win they can't explain clearly, when the story keeps changing, when success needs constant defense. That kind of money doesn't settle you. It keeps you alert, always checking, always justifying, always scanning for the next threat. Clean money is quieter. It arrives without apology, without inflated promises, without needing someone else to lose for you to win. It grows slower, but it doesn't demand vigilance. You can step away from it without fear. You can talk about it without rehearsing. You can let time pass. That's where quiet pride comes from. Not pride that looks for witnesses. Pride that shows up when no one is watching. When you know you built something without bending the rules in your head, without leaning on someone else's ignorance, without needing hype to carry substance. In this culture, the pressure to hustle is constant, faster, bigger, now. But Stoicism never equated speed with strength. It valued durability, a structure that holds when attention moves on, a reputation that doesn't need explanation, income that doesn't evaporate when trends shift. Justice isn't naive, it's strategic. Because the moment you trade integrity for acceleration, you introduce a new risk. Not external, internal. You start managing who you are becoming. That's expensive. Clean money simplifies your life. You don't worry about exposure. You don't flinch when asked direct questions. You don't fear audits, social or otherwise. You sleep without running scenarios. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person's worth is measured by what they devote themselves to, not what they accumulate. When you commit to earning through real value, skills service, honest exchange, you remove an entire category of anxiety from your future. You don't need to watch your back. You don't need to outrun your past decisions. You can focus. This isn't moral posturing, it's risk management. The man who chooses clean money isn't trying to look virtuous. He's trying to live without friction inside himself. That's the kind of success that lasts, not because it's impressive, but because it's stable. And stability, once you've tasted it, becomes non-negotiable. When the noise dies down, impatience speaks up. It asks why this isn't happening faster, why progress doesn't feel dramatic, why the numbers don't jump the way the stories promised. You see it everywhere. Charts climbing overnight, before and after timelines compressed into weeks. Someone younger, louder, suddenly there. And for a moment, the old pressure returns. Maybe you're moving too slowly. Maybe caution is hesitation in disguise. The Stoics would pause here. They watched nature closely, not markets, not trends. Nature doesn't sprint. It doesn't rush outcomes. It builds quietly, layer by layer, until strength becomes undeniable. A tree doesn't announce growth, but when storms come, you learn which roots were deep. Seneca wrote that no great thing is created suddenly. Not character, not resilience, not wealth that lasts. Speed feels powerful because it's visible. Slowness feels weak because it's silent. But silence is where structure forms. Think about the habits that actually change your life. They don't arrive with intensity. They arrive with repetition. Small transfers that happen every month. Consistent investing without drama. Spending decisions made the same way again and again. None of it is exciting. That's why it works. Fast money asks you to be alert at all times, watching, reacting, defending gains. Slow money asks for patience and consistency, and then it leaves you alone. The Stoics valued anything that reduced dependence on constant attention. They understood that what requires daily emotional input eventually drains judgment. This is why slow is strong. Not because it avoids risk, but because it distributes it across time. You don't bet everything on timing. You don't need to be right today or tomorrow. You just need to stay aligned. This mindset changes how setbacks land. A down month isn't failure. It's part of the pattern. A market dip isn't a verdict. It's a reminder of why steadiness matters. When your plan assumes turbulence, turbulence loses its power to shock. That's Stoic calm in practice. Not indifference. Preparedness. The culture pushes urgency because urgency sells. Act now. Don't miss out. last chance. Stoicism asks a quieter question. Will this still make sense in 5 years? That single filter eliminates most noise. Slow doesn't mean passive. It means deliberate. You still act. You still build. You still improve your position. You just refuse to be rushed into decisions that mortgage your future calm. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to do each thing as if it were the last with seriousness and care. Not haste. Care changes everything. You review instead of react. You adjust instead of abandon. You commit instead of chase. And over time, something strange happens. What once felt slow begins to feel inevitable. Progress compounds quietly. Confidence grows without performance. Your system holds without constant correction. Others burn out sprinting between ideas. You're still moving, still building, still sleeping. Slow is strong because it respects reality. Reality takes time. And when you accept that you stop fighting the process and start cooperating with it, that's when growth stops feeling fragile. Not because it's fast, but because it's anchored. And anchored things last. At some point, you notice the change without trying to name it. Nothing flashy has happened. No sudden win. No dramatic turning point. But the way you move through your days feels different. You pause before reacting. You decide without rushing. You feel less pulled by noise that once felt urgent. It shows up in small moments. You open your account and don't brace yourself. You hear bad news and don't immediately catastrophize. You're invited into situations that used to make you uncomfortable and you stay steady. This is the part most people never talk about. The work wasn't just financial, it was formative. Every choice you made to pause instead of impulse, to build a buffer instead of perform, to make the call instead of avoid it, to earn clean instead of fast, was shaping something underneath the numbers. Character. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't separate money from the self. They saw money as a mirror, not of intelligence, not of worth, but of habits. You become what you practice. When you practice reacting, you become reactive. When you practice restraint, you become grounded. When you practice courage, you become reliable under pressure. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. The same is true of actions. Repeated choices leave a residue. And over time, that residue hardens into identity. You're no longer someone trying to get control. You're someone who has it. Not perfectly, not absolutely, but enough to trust yourself. That trust is rare. It changes how you relate to money. Money stops feeling like a test you're constantly failing. It becomes a tool you understand how to use. You don't moralize every outcome. You don't panic when plans need adjusting. You think in terms of positioning, not validation. That's a quiet shift, but a permanent one. The Stoics believed that freedom wasn't something granted. It was something built by choosing reason over impulse, by choosing long-term alignment over short-term relief, by choosing to respond instead of react. This is the Stoic core loop at work. pressure appears, you see the options clearly. You choose the one that reinforces the person you want to be, not because it feels good in the moment, but because it feels right when you look back. That loop doesn't just stabilize finances. It stabilizes the self. You become harder to shake, less dependent on conditions going your way, more capable of standing calmly inside uncertainty. And that calm spreads into your work, your relationships, the way you speak, the way you listen. People sense it, not as dominance, as presence. You're not chasing approval. You're not rushing outcomes. You're building a life that holds. The Stoics never promised comfort. They promised coherence. A life where your actions, values, and direction point the same way. That's what's happening here. Not all at once, but unmistakably. You're becoming someone who doesn't need things to go perfectly in order to feel steady. Someone who can move forward without forcing the pace. Someone who knows that strength isn't loud, it's consistent. And once you recognize the man you're becoming, you realize something important. This isn't about money anymore. It's about who you trust yourself to be no matter what comes next. And from here, the meaning becomes clear. Not in a flash, in a settling. You find yourself back in a familiar place. End of the day. The car quiet. The phone in your hand. The numbers are still numbers. Some higher, some lower. But the feeling is different. There's no rush in your chest. No need to look away. No urge to fix everything at once. You don't feel rich. You feel steady. That steadiness is the point. Real wealth isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with upgrades or applause. It shows up as room to think, time to decide, the ability to absorb a hit without losing your footing, quiet control. That's what you've been building. By choosing restraint over impulse, by building a buffer instead of chasing appearances, by making the uncomfortable call instead of avoiding it, by earning in ways that don't fracture your sleep, by moving slowly enough for your judgment to stay intact. None of that made headlines. None of it needed witnesses, but it changed your position. The Stoics never measured success by what a person owned. They measured it by what could not be taken from them. Your capacity to respond instead of react. Your ability to stand without borrowing confidence from outcomes. Your willingness to act with reason when emotion asks for speed. That is wealth that survives downturns, that outlasts trends, that doesn't evaporate when conditions shift. Marcus Aurelius wrote that happiness depends on the quality of your thoughts. In modern life, stability depends on the quality of your systems. You've learned to build both. This doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means it becomes navigable. Problems still appear. Markets still move. Plans still change. But you're no longer negotiating from the edge. You have margin. You have clarity. You have a sense of direction that doesn't collapse under pressure. And that gives you something rare. Choice. You can stay when it's right. You can leave when it's time. You can say no without panic. You can say yes without fear. That freedom isn't purchased in a single moment. It's assembled quietly, decision by decision. If there's one thing to carry forward from this, let it be simple. Don't aim to look successful. Aim to be unshakable. Tonight, Take one small action that reinforces control. Review a recurring expense. Set up a buffer transfer. Make a note about a conversation you're ready to have. Nothing dramatic, nothing public, just something that moves your footing from fragile to firm. And then let time do what it does best. Because when control is quiet and consistent, wealth stops being something you chase and becomes something you live inside. May you move forward calmly. May your decisions serve you long after the noise fades. And may the steadiness you're building now carry you through whatever comes next.